Ahora les queremos presentar a una de las expositoras de Congreso Futuro. Ella es un fenómeno paranormal. Es especialista en la relación humano-robot. Se ha dedicado particularmente a estudiar cómo impactan los robots en las relaciones humanas, cómo se relacionan los humanos con los robots, y ha avanzado principalmente hacia al tema de los sex robots. Kate, francamente, tiene un campo que es inexplorado, pero que ya estamos experimentando como humanidad en distintos lugares del mundo. Hay aplicaciones concretas, que es tener un juguete sexual, pero hay otras aplicaciones, como por ejemplo las que se desarrollan en Japón, etcétera, donde uno tiene un pololo robot. Entonces, ¿en qué nos vamos a convertir? ¿Es el amor algo exclusivo de los humanos? ¿Es legítimo que tal como uno ama un peluche, ame un robot? Probablemente unas preguntas mucho más interesantes que estas en las que viene a presentar hoy día Kate Devlin. Welcome.
Hola. I don't speak Spanish and I apologize, which means I can understand a little. So from the previous talk, I think there are some things I'll agree with, and I think there's some things I will disagree with. So about 4 years ago, I started to study sex robots. It's a very niche area. And when you tell people at a university that you want to study sex robots, they say, why? And you get headlines like this. Headlines that say, a festival of sex robots is coming to London. There wasn't a festival. It was my conference at my university. You get headlines that say that it's going to take over and sex robots will steal your secrets and reveal them to the world. Well, anything that connects to the internet will steal your secrets. They say sex robots should be put in old people's homes, says expert. I'm the expert. I like that headline. I didn't say that. So I said something similar, but not that. So the idea of sex robots goes way back. And you might know the story of Pygmalion. Pygmalion, in a Roman story told by Ovid, was a sculptor. And he didn't like the women he saw every day. So he made himself a woman, as you do. He carved a woman, a statue, and he prayed that she would come to life. And he kissed her, and she came to life. And he married her, and they had children. I don't know how they had children, but they had children. So Galatea. And ever since then, we've had stories about creating the perfect artificial partner. And you see these stories in all of the sci-fi that we watch. And the sci-fi stories, they tend to be stories about female robots who rise up, who destroy their owners, who cause panic and chaos. And it's just like the men are scared of the women rising up and destroying the patriarchy. I'm so glad you agree. So these stories are really old stories where things always go wrong because we as humans fear technological change. It's very natural to fear the change, but it's also overrated. The change is never that bad. You even see it in films where there is no body for the robot. Films like Her, where the main character falls in love with a conversational AI, an operating system. She doesn't have a body, and yet still she is sexualized. Still she is made to be seductive, flirty, sexual, even though we can't even see her. So it's a really sort of thorough narrative. The reality is that the robots we have around us today tend to look very not human. So we have surgery robots. Robots that are used in hospital surgery can perform surgery more accurately than human surgeons, but they need human surgeons to operate them. Bomb disposal robots, and there's been a lot of work on those robots, and I have a friend, a colleague, Julie Carpenter, who studied people's relationships with bomb disposal robots, and they form a deep emotional bond because they rely on those robots to keep them safe. Agricultural robots out in the fields, and the most common form of robots we have in the world today are vacuum cleaners. The Roomba, right? And the most exciting thing a Roomba does is you can put a cat on top of it, dressed as a shark, and it spins around. So, but people get really attached to Roombas. They love their Roomba. You know, they go, oh, it's so cute. People are weird. We have robots that are used in therapy and in companionship. There's telepresence robots in the top left. They have a screen with the doctor's face. They wheel around the hospital. Telenoid robots are used to help people with dementia. This on the bottom left, this is Robert. Robert was a Japanese robot. Japan has a robotic strategy because the people who live there, it's a population that's getting increasingly older, and they don't have enough carers. And their immigration laws mean they won't bring people in to act as nurses and carers. So they decided to solve it by building robots. It didn't work. Robert can't lift people because he hurts them when he lifts them. He's not good with fragile skin. So they're starting to instead move towards exoskeletons, electric, motorized AI wheelchairs, things like that. And this little cute toy here, this is Paro. And Paro is a fluffy little seal. And he chirps, ooh, and his whiskers go. He has been used in nursing homes to provide companionship. And old people really bond with Paro, and they get the same therapeutic benefits as they do with a pet, except they don't have to feed him or clean up after him. And in one nursing home, they preferred Paro to the real dog that lived in the nursing home. So Paro is a big success. But what if we had robots that we could become friends with, or fall in love with, or, and it's a step further, have sex with? We'll get to that bit. So, this is Pepper. You may have seen Pepper. Pepper was designed to be gender neutral. Pepper is about 4 foot high, white plastic, on wheels, moves around. Pepper's eyes are massive cameras. They're recording everything. He's not friendly. He pretends to be friendly. And the creator said, Pepper is a robot that has no gender. Decide what you want to call Pepper. I try to be gender neutral with Pepper, but sometimes I call him he. Some people say it's a she. Whatever you want. It says you can decide yourself. Now, the interesting thing about Pepper is that in the terms and conditions, it says very clearly that you're not allowed to have sex with Pepper. Don't use Pepper for the purpose of sexual acts and obscene acts, or for the purpose of encountering or dating with an opposite sex. It doesn't say anything about same sex, so that's okay, but not opposite sex. Very heteronormative. So I think they put that in there because someone, somewhere, has tried to have sex with Pepper. And so they've warned you not to do that. And if you do that, it voids the warranty. So I got really interested in if we can build machines that are like us. I'm not saying it's a good idea. If we can build machines that are like us, should we give them the same feelings that we have? It can be useful because if you have a robot that can feel pain, if it hurts itself, it will stop damage to itself. So if it hit itself and it was sore, then it would stop immediately, and then the damage would be limited. So what if we made robots that could feel empathy and could care for people? Or what if we could make robots that could feel desire? Because when we are aroused, when we feel sexually aroused, our brains just go crazy, right? All these neurotransmitters are kicking off and people are they don't think rationally. It's interesting. So I started looking into sex robots, and I'm not the first person. There's been some work in the past, but it had reached the stage where people were saying they were building these things. They said they were going to build the world's first sex robot. And they had all these headlines like it was going to be the end of sex between humans, right? I didn't believe that. I don't think so. It said that these would be scarily real. They would look so much like real women that men couldn't tell the difference. Men aren't that stupid, mostly, right? Maybe some. Okay. So this is what we actually have in the world today. We have on the left, Roxy. Roxy was unveiled at a trade show in 2010 to much disappointment because Roxy is not very good. She is a bit like a shop mannequin with a wig, and if you press her hand, she says some words. Ooh, that's about it. Oh, I like you. It's not very good. This is Samantha on the right in the pink dress. Samantha was created by Sergi Santos, who builds his robots with his wife in a garage in Barcelona. And they've built a few. They don't build the doll part, they build the AI part. And he was interested in making an AI that would respond to you. So if you were nice to Samantha, Samantha was nice to you. If you were flirtatious with Samantha, she was flirtatious with you. If you were sexy with Samantha, she's sexy with you. So it's all about the two-way interaction. He stopped making her a couple of years ago after some very negative press coverage, which leaves only one strong contender in the race for the world's first sex robot, and that's Harmony in the middle. Harmony is built by a company in California called Abyss Creations, and they make high-end sex dolls known as real dolls. Now, the men who buy and it's predominantly men, it's mostly men, who buy the dolls call them love dolls because for them, sex is secondary. They're interested in the illusion of companionship. And I spent a while talking to people who buy these dolls and own these dolls, and they're a really nice bunch of people. They're like a bunch of hobbyists. They buy the dolls for different reasons, to photograph, to collect, to make into their friends, to dress up, to have sex with, all these things. So the people who make the dolls said, we think the customers might want interactivity. So they made Harmony. She doesn't move from the neck down. She can't stand up on her own. She has no movement in her body. But her face is animatronic, and she can smile and blink and nod and turn her head. And she has an AI personality. Her AI personality is really quite a good chatbot. They have good people working on this. And it's a chatbot that can remember your birthday and your name and sing you a song and tell you a joke and remember what sexy talk you like. If you want, you can buy the app for Harmony for $20 and have a virtual girlfriend on your phone and carry her everywhere with you. And that's available now. The robot is not. The robot is still in production. They're all still in production. Because that's the thing. There's no army of sex robots taking over the world. All there is a very small collection of workshops in the US and China, and one in Europe, making sex dolls with some movement. It's no more advanced than that. There's no financial backing. There's no marketing plan. It's just some people experimenting. This is, if I can play, this is Samantha talking. We can't hear her, but...
I can't make a
Oh, we can hear her.
I've got a special surprise for you.
Oh, yeah?
I will not tell you yet. I will wait for the right moment.
So I went to see Harmony when she was being made. And I went thinking, I am going to hate this. This is against everything my feminist principles stand for. And instead, I was really impressed. I was actually impressed by the level of skill that went into the creation, if you view it as an object that is not supposed to represent a woman. Because one of my big problems with this is that it objectifies and perpetuates body image, issues around body image. Which is why I think we're really doomed when we try to make human robots, because we are terrible at making human robots. It is complicated, it is expensive, it is difficult, it uses up too much energy, and our brains will always know that it's not real. That's the uncanny valley effect. So we're a bit doomed. I don't know why they're sticking with this format. People start to get really worried and excited, overly so. So we have robots like hacked sex robots could murder people, security expert warns. I can assure you that a sex robot could never murder someone because they can't move. I mean, maybe it could electrocute you. That's about it. The story, sex robot molested, destroyed at electronics show. This was the Samantha robot. Sergey took it to an electronics show, and he said, I put the robot on display, and I said to people, oh, go ahead, you can touch. And so everyone went, oh. And they started to touch, not sexually, just because they wanted to feel what it was like. And it got damaged. And the newspaper said, this doll was sexually assaulted. It wasn't sexually assaulted. But he got really upset with this coverage. It was just people poking around at an object they didn't understand. But there clearly are worries. So people worry, if we build a sex robot and someone is violent, will they be violent to people, probably women in real life? And I did a lot of work into this, and from what I can see, the people who buy sex dolls are incredibly respectful of the dolls. That's not to say there aren't people out there who will be violent. There are always people out there who will be violent. But I didn't see a strong evidence that it would lead to increased violence. And we see this argument around computer video games. We see that people say, if you play violent video games, perhaps you'll be more violent in real life. And we don't have evidence for that at all. This last one, sex robots may literally fuck us to death. I mean, technically they could, if they don't stop. But which is actually the point that the article was making. They were saying that in AI, there's a control problem, and it's like the Sorcerer's Apprentice or the magic porridge pot. If you program your AI wrong, it might carry on and try and fulfill its goal and never stop. So if you say to a robot, pleasure me, and the robot just keeps going and going, and you're like, oh, it's not working for me, and they keep going, and then you die. It could happen. There are other issues that I'm not going to go into, but there are arguments around pedophilia. So what happens if someone makes a childlike sex robot? And this is a concern because there are people who create childlike sex dolls. It's not a nice area to have to research, but it turns out that there's not evidence to say whether it would be an escalation or a way of alleviating those urges. But we will never be able to run an ethical study to try and measure that. It's just too complicated and dangerous. Sometimes the headlines are okay. Sometimes they say, hey, don't worry, they won't ruin sex. They might even make it good for some people. I have my concerns, but I don't think sex robots in the form of a stereotype woman will ever be mainstream. I think it's going to be a very niche, very small market that will never, ever become widespread. There's just not the market or the funding or the inclination. And so I wondered, why do we even bother with that when we can do more interesting things? If you could design your own sex robot, what would it look like? No, I get asked that a lot by journalists. And sometimes I like to say, mine would look like a blanket that I could wrap around me and it would hug me. And perhaps it's a blanket made of breasts, or sometimes it might vibrate, or it might be a blanket with some rigid bits. Maybe it reads erotica to me. Who knows? Why not have bendy tentacle arms? Why not be a strange blob with 4 legs? We can use our imagination. So because of that, I ran a sex tech hackathon in 2016. So hackathon, 24 hours of tech development, but we specifically said we want more than just techies. So we had techies. We had tech people, students, psychologists, artists, musicians, material scientists, industry experts from the sex toy world. We brought them all together, 50 people, and we said, let's prototype new forms of technology that don't look like a stereotype of a woman in robot form. It was so interesting. And so it worked so well, we did it the following year as well. So I'm going to show you just a few of the things that we did. This is LovePad. This is one of the winning groups from the first year. It's soft robotics, so it's cast from silicone. And they made this weird, organic-looking, almost Cronenberg-like tentacles. And the idea here is that you can place this anywhere in your body, on anyone's body. And when you squeeze the controller that's shaped a bit like a breast, when you squeeze it, it makes the tentacles curl. So you've got this gripping motion going on that you can put anywhere. And it was a really lovely way to explore how the technology could fit all body types. And it's not limited to having certain genitals or having a certain configuration of limbs. This is one of my favorites. This is called Peacock. So the people who made this, they said, if someone has a penis, you can tell if they're aroused, right? It's visible. If someone has a vagina, it's a bit harder to tell if they're aroused. So what they said is, we're going to make a signal. And they got a sex toy that was a vaginal egg, and they covered it in moisture sensors and pressure sensors. And when it got squeezed, or when it got wet, a peacock's tail opened up. And I just thought that was the most beautiful thing. But also, you could make prosthetics like that. You could build new forms of body parts that work like this. It's so cool. It even made little chirping noises as well. It went like birds tweeting. It was really sweet. The following year, this was the winner. And I call this a sensory shawl. They call this a sex blanket. But essentially, it has sensors on it, and you put it on your body. And if you're in a virtual or augmented reality environment and you see things happen, you can feel it corresponding. So they were inspired by this scene from American Beauty where the rose petals fall from the roof. And they said, imagine if you're lying there and you're looking at these rose petals and then you feel them touch you all over. This idea of being immersed in it. So we explored a lot about how we can take this technology, because we can make it embodied, we can make it immersive, we can make it sensuous, we can make it more about intimacy. We can make it so we can share it with other people. And there's a big market out there for smart sex toys that are connectable. Or we can make it just something we use on our own. Or we can use it to mediate relationships. I just find this a really lovely way of exploring what you can do in the future, because what could be better than someone giving you a hug over the internet, as I found out. And this is coming to the end now, but this is me lying on a sleeping bag on some chairs, and I have these plastic tubes over me. And when I flick a switch, the tubes fill up with air and squeeze me tight and hug me. And it was just such a nice feeling. And one of the people at the hackathon said, "No one's hugged me in a really long time." And that felt so good to be hugged. I thought, that's lovely. Maybe we can provide internet hugs at last. It looks a bit like I'm about to have an autopsy. It looks like I'm going to get cut open, but yeah, it was a really exciting time. So my message really is, this idea of the sex robot, if you see the headlines, please know that they're not out there. They are not taking over. They're not going to ruin human-human relationships. We are really good at doing human-human relationships. Even when we do them badly, we're good at them. They are out there, and some people may like them, but it's never going to be a big thing. But what is interesting is this kind of thing. And the sex toy market, the sex tech market, is worth about $30 billion a year, right? It's huge. This year at the Consumer Electronics Show was the first time they allowed sex toys, at last, because there was such a fuss made before. So we're seeing it becoming less taboo. We're seeing people exploring for pleasure. We're seeing sex toys for people with disabilities. We're seeing sex toys for people who need therapeutic input. It's all going really well. And if you want to read more about it, I've written a book about the whole thing, which is out now, and the paperback version is out in February. But yes, please go out and use your imagination and design your own, because it's so much fun. Thank you.